Hi, so today I'm going to be adding color and finishing up my comic. Hi, my name is Escobar. I'm a storyboard artist on the Simpsons television show. I've been working on the show for over 25 years now, and I'm here to empower you. So this is the second time I'm using this kind of watercolor brush that I downloaded a while back, and it's time to finish up all the things. So I did do a slightly different approach when I was doing the flatting in the previous video. So the idea here was that once I went into the color, it should be quick. What ended up happening was I was extremely sloppy with the color because I was going as fast as I possibly could because I didn't want to spend all that much time doing the color. So at the end of the day, when I added up the time spent, because I recorded everything in small bite-sized pieces, I would work on it for 20 minutes a day sometimes. I wasn't able to get to it all the time. When all the process when I added up the entire clips and saw how long it actually took me to do, it took me about 8 hours, and that is in spite of the fact that I think I accidentally forgot to press record for about a 20-minute period or a 10-minute period at one point. And then I wasn't aware that I had forgotten to press record. So there is a slight jump in the process. So I'll talk about what happened and what I was doing as I go. So let's get started. So if I've done my process well, the flatting process well, what I tend to do is I select the gray selection layer, and then I work within it. Like I wand it, and then that way I could just really quickly with a mono brush just add a flat color. And then once I'm done with that, I go and on top of that exact same flat color and with the watercolor brush, and I just start adding watercolor brush strokes. Now if you're going to see something, the thing about the watercolor brush is that it takes the color. See how my color palette on the that I'm picking from, the colors on the right hand side, there is a red on the bottom and a white on the top in this right now, and then it went to gray, and then it goes to skin tone, and then so the secondary color, not the one on the top, but the one that's like underneath, that actually comes through in the watercolor brush. They both kind of mix. So when I'm coloring skin, I use a red undercolor, and then I choose the darkest skin color on my palette here on the left. And then when I'm coloring anything else, I use a dark blue. So you can see I'm using dark blue here to work on the clothes. And then when I turn to red, it's because I'm usually working on skin. And that's on purpose. It works better that way. It looks more natural because skin tends to be, what's the word? It tends to have, it tends to be transparent. And when you have transparent skin, ideally, when it gets darker, it gets redder and brighter. Actually, that's one of the things that makes skin look more natural. Instead of going to brown and gray, you go into darker and redder and even more saturated reds sometimes, and then you can get a very natural feeling skin tone. And one of the reasons why, like I said, it's because the skin is transparent, but there's also muscle underneath. So we're just kind of implying that there's muscle and blood underneath the skin because, again, it's transparent. So that's what I'm doing here. You could see that I'm using blue here for the hair as an underdrawing, as the undercolor, while it's a brown of the actual color. There's a dark green here, but again, the blue is the undercolor, and it's coming through. The harder I press on this specialized brush, a watercolor brush, the bluer it gets, and then the lighter I press, the more it's the top color. So it's a very interesting brush, and it gives a very beautiful effect. Now here I am replacing the old background with the background that I already colored earlier. Also, I really blurred the background. I just didn't want the background to get in the way. I didn't want any of the details in the background to get in the way. So the idea here is to blur the background as much as possible. I also have that white haze around the characters so that they stand out even more from the background. It's something that I saw in a manga one time, and I thought maybe I should try it on mine. Just so that I don't have to fight the background. A lot of the times, too often, I found because I'm using a CG background and there's a ton of detail in that CG background, that the CG background got in the way, and it tangented. There was too many lines and weird things going on with the characters in the foreground. So I'd rather just blur the snot out of the background and even just haze it out almost completely around the characters. That way I don't have to even worry about the background. The background is implied and nobody's really looking at it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters are the characters. And the weird thing about this is that I couldn't decide when I was painting all these things and coloring these things because it went for days and days and days, and it took me a long time to do this just because I was only doing a little bit at a time. I kept experimenting with the layer types that I would be using, especially when it came to the shadows. So sometimes I would use I would turn it into the screen adjustment layer. Sometimes I would turn it into multiply adjustment layer. It's like I just kept messing around, and I was never really all that consistent about the adjustment layers that I did on the background. I would always play around with it. One of the things that was extremely helpful in this process was the lighting of the figures before I even got anything done. So as you can tell in the gray, there's already shadows and light. So when I started putting in my colors, there already seems a little bit more, it seemed a little bit more finished, right? And then when I started actually painting in the watercolor, one of the things that I said in the intro was that I was being very sloppy about it. And it turns out that and the reason why I was sloppy about it was that as I was painting, I realized I didn't have to be super precise. The lighting that I had already created in the flatting stage was doing so much of the heavy lifting that I could actually be sloppy and not worry about being beautiful and perfect. So, and what that did was it helped speed up the entire process. I didn't have to be precious about every single little thing. And because it was months between or weeks or often days between certain things, I would forget what I did in the previous panels, and then I would end up having to reinvent it. This is a background. So one of the things that I needed to do here, and I did it in the previous thing, the previous background, was I needed to add all these textures on the background. And so like here I am putting the tiles on the floor using the perspective grid that I had created based off of the characters and the background. Just because it's a CG background doesn't mean that I didn't have to figure out what the perspective grid was. Specifically so that the tiles that I put into the floor would be natural this way. And also so that the placement of the characters would work. And then for this is a bit of a tedious part of the process where I'm putting textures on the background to just make everything look right. And the interesting thing about all of this is that I kind of have to put all these little details in anyway, even if you don't see them, because when I blur the background, these details still come through. You could still tell that there is a marble texture to all these things, even though the background itself gets really blurred. So it is very helpful, in spite of the fact that that I blur it, that I actually go out of my way to add all these textures very clearly into the background. And it's not the best thing ever, but okay. So I think that I'm coming to the end of this. Um, but this was the last group of characters that I did. They were all in one layer, so I had to just be very careful about painting them. But in this, I think the part that takes the longest is placing in all these flats. Like I said, I used the mono brush to just kind of put the flat in, and it's interesting because it doesn't look too flat because there's already kind of a lighting on top of everything here. Oh, I guess I'm not coming to the end because I'm still got to do the actual painting itself. But here I get really sloppy. Like I got the sloppiest with the in this panel. I just really wanted to get done, but it doesn't look sloppy, which is really interesting. The sloppier I got, the more natural it looked, and it's part of the reason is because I did put a a highlight, a rim light around all the characters at the end. You could see that I put a rim light, and I put bounce light coming in from the background, so that helps a lot in really selling the character, and the finishing touches here that really sell the ideas here are like the blush on the face, the highlights on the eyes, the highlights on the nose and lips, things like that, and the bounce lights coming in into the dark areas, and the rim lights on the characters. When you put those last little tiny finishing touches, it really sells the idea of the it just makes it look more finished, right? That's the idea, is to make it look nice. Like here's the rim light, see? So and that's it, like putting those last blushes and reflections, and at the end I did add a little bit of a glow effect on all the characters just to push the light. So thanks a lot for watching. Thank you so much. I hope you've learned something from this, and I will talk to you next time. All right, bye.